for the nerds. This is for the brainiacs. This what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back. You ain't gonna touch me. You not gonna do nothing. You are not above me. I bet you wish you was me. I know it, I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Only Friends podcast. And I'm here, joined by my only friends.
You just don't have the swagger, Burke. You just don't have it.
Thank you for unmuting me. What in the fuck is going on? My God. I need to get out of my prison cell.
Yeah, what is it?
Are you in there with Chin in his tunnel, or what's going on here?
Chin at least has a better background.
What'd you catch a case for, man?
That looks like a padded cell.
It does.
I caught a case for calling a river race.
Don't
do it.
That's
Don't
true.
Do it. No,
Hashtag they always have it. Brokers has been saying this on Twitter for years, man. Like, they always have it.
You weren't saying that yesterday, were you?
Wait, what?
You weren't saying that yesterday.
Go on.
No, you were saying you meant to call rivers.
Oh, for $100, yes, Henry. We are going to donate to people to see what they have.
This guy,
you fucking nit.
Take a day off.
Take a day off,
Take
mate.
a day off, Matt. All right, seriously. Go to the gym.
Henry tried to cancel the pod to get us all in the gym. My God, man, I'm looking at all the shots and they are so clean and crisp. And like looking at Conrad now just like actually makes me sick.
Yo, relax, man. You gotta do that to me, you know? We're just here. You know, I know that you become a lighting expert. You went to lighting school and shit.
Exactly.
I know you these things.
You understand
we
that.
gotta do what we gotta do. We're a traveling podcast, and
You
sometimes
look like you have to hold a newspaper to say that you're alive. Yo, those are busting though, for real, for real.
Yeah, they're busting for real. I was so happy to see him in the casino.
That's legit. All right, we got a lot to cover today.
You look like me doing an ad read. You look like me.
Everyone's fired up today. Let's go. All right.
Landon's got it today, man. He's sharp. He's quick.
W-Riz, baby.
No.
Take a day off.
El-Riz.
Take a day off, mate.
Can somebody please explain what Riz is to me?
You don't need to know, Connie, man. Bro, just
I can't take this.
No.
It's better if you don't know.
It is
quite
better.
honest.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it that way.
Yeah.
That's good.
We have a packed show today. We're introducing something new that I want to get in the habit of. Tuesdays are for strategy. So today we're going to do a little bit of strat chat. We brought in the expert Henry Kilbane to give us his rundown on some things. But before we get to all of that, I have some other things that we want to cover. First and foremost, Mid-Stakes Bible, the long-awaited next edition. I've been promising you guys additional videos for this course for quite some time. That is finally out today. We're digging into multi-way pots. So today is lesson 5. And I'm just going to like slow release these throughout the course of the year rather than trying to position it towards the end of the year when I'm way too busy to put out a full course. So this episode is out today. I'm hopeful to get you guys another one maybe by the end of February, early March. But I do believe we have a preview of today's lesson. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mid-Stakes Bible. In this part, we'll tackle the difficult task of building a strategy conducive to multi-way environments. Multi-way environments are the best way to actually get back to thinking logically about the game, utilizing a game theory framework, but not actually having the solutions available to us to double check as though they're answers in the back of a book. In today's lesson, we're going to examine the different formation types that arise multi-way and how we can functionally leverage leads both as the preflop aggressor and the preflop defender. All right, so if you haven't already, head over to solveforwhy.io if you want to check out the Mid-Stakes Bible. There are 5 lessons in that course. The first 4 are mostly just dealing with game theory principles and getting you primed to construct a strategy from the ground up. We're now moving into multi-way. I'm going to be doing 3 or 4 lessons on those, including bomb pots. And then from there, we're going to dig into post-flop plays. So that's the plan for 2023 and the Mid-Stakes Bible course. Again, if you haven't already, head over to solveforwhy.io, sign up today. We also still have 2 seats available at the February Academy, February 2nd to the 5th. This is a Poker Out Loud style academy, so it'll be you and 7 of your peers playing in a live cash environment where you have to speak your thoughts out loud at each decision point along the way. That will happen every other day. The days in between will be teaching you strategy construction, basically prepping you and priming you to make these decisions in game and give better thoughts and feedback. Head over to academy.solveforwhy.io if you're interested in signing up for that. Let's get to the shits, boys.
To the shits.
Let's get to the shits. You got yourself in some shits this morning, Henry.
No drama.
Oh man, it's 2023, year of no drama. Come on.
Year of no drama. You out in these streets, man. You finally. This is what American live poker is like, bro.
No, but it's not American though, is it? That's the problem.
Is it?
Is that the Americans are absolutely fine. We love the Americans.
Yeah, because we're the whales.
No, like
Bro, we're the whales. You can say it, man. Especially in PLO. Like we get out there.
Listen, we're all whales in PLO. Let's be honest. No one has a clue what they're doing 500 bigs deep.
That great game, yeah. Well, you were 500 big blinds deep in this hand, from what I understand. And to give a brief synopsis of what happened, I'll tell what I read as a third party, an objective third party, and then you can intervene as you see fit. It appears a late night PLO session was getting off. I think you were playing 5-5-10 with a rock.
5-5 the rocks.
Okay.
A 10. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the rock is 10. You're hella deep. Sounds like you're about 5K effective.
4K effective.
Okay, 4K effective.
3.8.
You and a gentleman to your left, you have a bit of a rapport. You've been playing all night. There are 2 other players who are, I guess, 50 blinds effective with the rock.
Yeah.
And they get all in for $500 a piece. You have matched that 500 and put in another 2K on top.
Correct.
With about 1,300 behind.
Correct.
With the gentleman to your left. And this is where it gets a little bit squirrely.
Mm-hmm.
So if I read the details correctly, this gentleman then says, do you want to run the bigger side pot twice?
Yep.
To which you agree, and then try to include the other 2 players. You ask them if they want to run it twice. One says yes. Another says, no, you guys have money behind. You're meant to play this out. And you just say, okay, no problem. Board comes King 7-7. You say check. Player behind seems to just decide that you guys are going to check it down at this point.
I already know what he has at this point.
He tabled or he told
No,
you?
he just he goes, I have a massive hand and I have King, Queen, Jack 10 double suited.
Okay.
So it's obvious what he's got. It's just it's a slow played aces and it's bad aces.
Yeah.
It's obvious that it's bad aces because he didn't squeeze pre.
Right.
So yeah, he opens, 7 players call. I squeeze from the big from last position to 200 or whatever. He flats with the ace 9 deuce rainbow. Short stacks all in. Other short stack says run it. I then tank and I check my itinerary. I'm like, okay, I'm 4K effective. And I basically thinking out loud, I'm just like, okay, do I want to play a 10K pot right now? Which I literally said, I'm like, do I want to play a 10K pot? I flat the 500. He then makes it 25. I call, plans to fold any ace high board, plans to lead any 6, 7, 8, any flush draw, any pair, etc. I call. He then snap grabs my left arm as the dealer's making the pot, and he's just like, okay, do you want to run it twice? And at that point, I think, well, if he's offering to run the side pot twice, it's only fair to involve the other 2 players, right?
Which I think is correct, yeah.
So I asked them if they want to run it twice. The guy with 9-9-4-3 single suited, Snap says, yeah, let's run it twice. And then the other guy who's obviously more aware of the way that these hands can play out and the potential EV for him to gain by us having money behind, which is obviously his right entirely, says, no, you still have money behind. You have to play it out. To which I respond, okay, that is 100% fair. You're right. But at this point, I already know what this guy has. And he's just and he literally says, let's just check it down. The flop comes King 7-7. I'm like, yeah, okay, I check. Which, again, in Lars's defense, by the way, and I don't know how I feel about arguing without Lars being here, kind of to tell his side of the story and his version, because it's, it's like using our platform
be fair,
and a friend's platform.
Yeah, which I agree with. To be fair, I don't necessarily want to determine who's right or wrong here.
Right.
I think the bigger debate here is how to properly do business with multiple players involved.
Yeah.
Because I think having read both yours and Lars's side of things, and we can cut to Lars's tweets because I think they'll do a good job of portraying his argument with him not being here. Let's run through these really quickly. So number one, he says, regret calling your actions scummy because I can't say with certainty you did what you did to gain an advantage. Go on number two. Regardless of your intent, your action cost 2 recs that were already in equity in the hand. Well, that's not true. They get to realize their equity at the fullest because they're all in, but it may have cost them EV. That's an important distinction, I think. Number 3, ask yourself why 1 rec was opposing you guys stopping the action. It's because he knows it's unfair to him, regardless if you guys proceed to agree to check it down, which is in fact collusion. You can expand. That point I think is debatable, but go on. What happened? Sorry, I'm relying on you to read these. You have to show replies.
We got it.
Oh, we got a boomer working the mic here. I didn't think I'd have to explain how Twitter works. Poor Guapo.
Damn.
Oh,
Big
man.
Guapo.
Number 4, all I did was saying you shouldn't do that after the hand was over. Okay, like this is just about your interactions. It doesn't really matter. I don't think you're a bad guy, but I think the reason I picked this up afterwards is because it's clearly unfair towards the 2 recs. Okay. For people that don't understand the hand, okay, this is what I think is most important. So if you scroll down to number 6, for people that don't understand the hand
And the Henry fanboys.
The 2 recs, which admittedly I'm a Henry fanboy. The 2 recs are all in for about 500. Henry calls 5k deep. Well, it sounds like they're more like 4k deep. And faces a raise to 2.5k, which he calls. Also ask yourself who has the better range here. These details are
Obviously the guy has aces.
Yeah, of course. Like
I'm folding ace high boards. I'm folding deuce 3. Like
this stuff also just like doesn't really matter because really all he's trying to do is paint the argument for you being ahead or behind post, but you only have $1,300 behind, and the pot is currently going to be like 6k. So it doesn't matter whose range is stronger. All that matters is that when you're getting laid 7.3 to 1, what type of hands or equity do you need in order to call off? So it's like you're going to need like 13% equity to call off post. It's not that difficult. There are very few flops that you're going to fold is the point.
Right.
Cut back to that again. Okay, so he states his hand. Here's the problem. If they play without talking to each other, Henry will check fold some flops, basically complete misses. Yeah, that's true. He takes away the chance, though occasionally rare, that it costs one of these guys an already all-in 2k pot. So like I think that this point is very valid, right? So he talks about like think about whose range is stronger between yours and this guy's. Well, the same holds true for the 2 people who are all in, obviously. So you're not... Whatever. The final point is that when it comes down to the actual mechanics and the rules, obviously there is something to be said here for the way that EV is distributed, right? In essence, when you 2 check it down, the 2 all-in players win the pot a little bit less frequently because what he's implying is that you will have some check folds. Now I would assume King 7-7 wouldn't be one of them, but maybe I guess if you know that he has exactly aces, you might fold your hand at some frequency. Although I would imagine you're about 15% to win this pot.
Backdoor as well.
Yeah, right, correct.
And can still run turn and river twice, by the way.
That's also true. Yeah, that is also true. Once you are all in, you could run it twice. So anyway, all of that is not really the point here. The point here is what do we do in scenarios like this where people who are less in tune to the rules present an awkward scenario? Because what I took away from this, I think the implication that you were being scummy here, again, I wasn't there, so like maybe the interaction isn't going precisely, but I read both of your accounts and it doesn't sound like there was much contradicting how it went down. Once the recreational who has 1,300 behind basically propositions you to do business,
right?
What can be done? Because so much information is exposed at this point, right? The strength of his hand is exposed. The desire to get to the river without putting any more money in is exposed. And at that point, I would make the argument that the little sliver of EV that the 2 all-in players gain by this range being able to protect them by jamming flops is all but gone, because you have basically perfect information. Mm-hmm. So from that point forward, when he basically says, like, let's check it down, which I do agree. I even said this on Lynn's podcast, like that level of soft play does border on collusion.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between when it's premeditated and agreed upon, which was what I was implying was happening in the Rip Robbie scenario, versus being in game, having a guy look at you and just say, like, I don't want to put any more money in this pot.
Right.
I'm not saying one is more ethical than the other or one is more excusable than the other. But what I am saying is that the corrective actions on the latter are very difficult to highlight, right? So when a recreational says, like, I want to do business, and so basically, like, if this were a heads up pot, it would have been totally fine. You guys would have been able to do business.
Yeah, of course.
He would have been able to say, like, do you want to just, like, check it down and run it twice or whatever? And nobody would have been intervened because there's no EV distributed otherwise, right? But because it's 4 ways, Lars is right. You do have to protect the 2 all-in players to some degree. However, it wasn't you that propositioned this man, as far as I understand.
No.
Right? He propositioned you.
Mm-hmm.
So once that proposition takes place, what then can we do as professionals in order to protect the integrity of the game? I said the only thing I thought you could have done differently is jam river once you have the board locked. So it's the turn was a king. It goes check, check again, which I think is quite reasonable. And then the river's a brick. And I said, like, I think it's quite reasonable that you should shove there based off the fact that you have the nuts. But again, even in that instance, you're not protecting anybody but yourself.
And shoving seems super scummy now that I know what he's got as well.
Yeah, I understand your reasoning for
like,
not.
In my shoes, that seems like super unethical when he's just like, hey, do you want to run it twice? Oh no, someone else has intervened. We're not allowed to run it twice. I now have the best hand. I'm all in.
Right.
Grow up.
The irony of that is that I would jam that spot just basically so that there was no argument of collusion. But I would also jam that spot expecting him to literally never call. Which is now why jam.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I'm jamming to basically fulfill the mechanics of an arbitrary rule. Not an arbitrary rule, but of a rule that exists that says, like, when you have good hand, maybe an unspoken rule is the right way to say it.
But don't forget there's a huge side pot.
Right.
Like, so if I know what he's got, like he can still call there thinking I'm just trying to like steal the 4K.
Yeah.
That's like between us.
Okay, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Like,
the side pot's big enough where bluffing could occur.
100%. Like he I don't think he's ever folding river if I jam. And I think it's super unethical. And the reason why this even became a thing in the first place is because this guy's in my DMs saying that I'm scummy. He's trying to out me.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I personally would typically agree with him, but I just think the way that he approached it, and he wants me in that spot in the heat of the moment. As soon as the guy offers to run it twice, I'm apparently this is things that all regs do, I'm meant to stand up and say to him, no, sir, you are stealing potentially a sliver of EV from these other 2 players. I may bet on flop, turn, or river, which hasn't happened in the history of the fucking game.
Wait, I'm confused slightly, like, why EV is being slightly won?
Because
Henry could fold flop.
Yeah. So like if I check fold flop, the EV that I fold is then split equal or not
equally, nowhere near
not
close.
equally.
That's the important thing to
their percentage will go up
slightly though.
Yes.
Like this is very important to understand. Most of that EV is distributed to the person who jams flop.
Right. Yeah.
The vast majority of it. So at the end of the day,
because they are now like just getting some
3-way now for the main pot
and 3-way for the main instead of 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But like at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway here is this in my opinion, and it's funny because I even said off air, like this is such a pedantic argument to me and like ridiculous, but I want to take like Lars's side because by the letter of the law, he's obviously correct.
Of course.
But this to me falls under the realm of soft skills that you deal with in the live venue. So like I've seen this play, like, I read both threads and both are kind of saying like this is something that like literally almost never happens. Well, In the high stakes arena, this always happens. Like
There's a
legitimately,
lot of business being
so
done.
much business gets
Yeah.
done. So much business gets done. And for me personally, even though like it took me reading this argument for like a solid 40 minutes for me to even, I had the same reaction as Landon.
Right, you just have the numbers circling around your head.
Of just like, what the fuck is the difference here if it's 4-way or 3-way to the end? Because it's so rare that Henry will fold flop, right?
I'm sorry that you wasted 40 minutes of your time reading the argument as well.
I enjoy thought experiments. But the thing is that what makes this so difficult is that at some point it doesn't become it doesn't become irrelevant anymore, right? If the main pot is, call it 10K,
Right.
and everybody has like really nutted ranges, and like now it's not necessarily clear that the EV shifts to one person unfairly or whatever, and maybe the side pot is only like 2K or something to that effect, right? And now protection or the integrity of the game, or maybe like let's say they're 20K effective instead of $1,300 effective, and there's a lot of play left out. At some point it's very, very clear that them playing poker after the flop is important to the two people who are all in.
This is why in most public scenarios they run it once only with multiple players involved for the most part.
I don't think that that's
Like
true.
floor rules are just run it once always.
I don't think
with
that's
multiple
true.
people.
What,
It
'cause
is true.
Where?
Yeah.
Only like two, only rate games. And the reason,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's not high stake. It's just free.
No, I think rate games, they don't even allow you to run it twice at all.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Most don't.
Right,
But
but
if they do, they want
But
to
he's
do it
saying
with
in
multiple
time
players.
games, if it's multi-ways, they don't allow you to.
where?
I don't know. I'm just.
Right, that's what I'm okay. Well, I'm
Bryce,
asking like where?
I don't know.
Name me a place where you're
So
not
in,
allowed to
so
run
in
twice.
time, so versus rake and like timed and untimed rake games. In time games, you can kind of do whatever you want, and in rake games, they only let you run it once.
Generally, yeah.
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 And honestly, like that's good for that's smart for the players. In rake games, you don't want to run it twice
Agreed.
because chopping the pot and paying the rake is terrible,
Right.
right? Especially in high rake games. So like the casino's actually doing the players a big favor there. And in time games, usually it comes with A, being uncapped, so running it twice is much more important to keeping your ecosystem healthy. But B, even if it's not uncapped, stacks can tend to get a little bit deeper.
I'm still having the numbers float around my head where if everyone agrees to run it twice, like there's just no more action left in the hand, right?
Right.
Correct, but one person didn't agree here.
Yeah. One guy didn't agree.
One person that already has all their money in
Correct.
did
Yeah.
not agree.
Correct.
Right.
And that's the whole point that I'm getting at.
So then
is,
it should only be once.
yeah, and it did only go once.
That's what happened.
But that's not the point. What ends up happening now is because that discussion was even had, a certain collusion effect takes place,
right.
right? So a certain
There's some
soft,
money.
a certain soft collusion between Henry and the person with money behind starts to take place.
Were they both incentivized to check down?
Well,
No.
not necessarily.
It's just,
It's just the fact that they kind of talked about checking down when like somebody could be bet out of this hand. And like if somebody's bet out of this hand, it's obviously better for the person that's all in, or one of the people that's all in.
exactly what Conrad just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So insane.
ultimately, what we're trying to like conclude is how do you navigate the soft skills of this, right? Because if Lars had, here's my issue with it, of why I think it's why I think he's making much ado about nothing. Maybe that's not even the right phrasing. Mountain out of molehill is maybe
a bigger deal than
the better
it is.
phrasing. Yeah, but the big reason why I think that is if he truly had a case for this being like an egregious form of cheating, he would have just called the floor
Yeah.
Right.
and they would have handled it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Well-
if they would have thought that Henry was truly cheating here, they would have kicked him out. But like no floor worth their salt would even really bother to hear this out.
What do you think a floor should do? Like, let's say you were the floor and you heard this happen.
Right. So this is why I'm coming back to this being a soft skill, because what I think the floor would do and should do is very similar to how I think it should just be policed in game.
And what
Right.
do you think that is?
So if the floor comes over and they hear this argument, I think that they should just say, hey, don't do that again.
Right.
And that's exactly what they're going
what's
to
gonna
do.
happen.
Right.
like, just don't have the conversation about running it twice.
Yeah. Like in a multi-way pot, don't talk about your hand.
Yeah.
But it's also unpunishable in cash. What are they going to do? Give you a timeout?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? There's no penalty. right?
Yeah,
So
there's no penalty for it. It's just like it's one of those things that you just like hope everybody abides by the rules.
right,
like,
same thing as like folding out a turn and all these other
cards.
Yeah, right. So it's like all of these things are frowned upon, and there are quote unquote rules against them, but there's no real penalties in cash other than kicking the player out. And you have to do something pretty egregious, and the entire pool would agree to this, right? Like you have to be an egregious, consistent violator in order to get kicked out.
It's like you've had these conversations and shown cards multiple times, and you're
fold out a turn
trying to
over and over and over again.
You're trying to gain EV here over enough of a sample.
Yeah, it's when people do things that very clearly demonstrate repetitive behavior to try to gain EV in their favor.
Right.
In this instance, even if Henry initiated it, it could just be a byproduct of like, this is a really big pot in a small game. Right. So it's not even necessarily anything beyond the instinct of like just trying to protect variance. But I don't even want to talk too much about that because I don't think he initiated it from both accounts. So it's not really important, right?
That's the most insane thing. Is like he's basically, and then this is the reason I have beef with it, because I think integrity and reputation in this industry is so fucking important.
Sure.
And it's something I've worked, so, and he like starts throwing around the term collusion. Starts playing whispers with his neighbor, saying like, I can hear them whispering out the corner of my ear. It's like, oh, it's collusion, but it'd be difficult to prove it, this, that, and the other. And I just turn around to him, just like, look, mate. It's like, what are you doing? And then he's like DMing me saying, I'm going to take this publicly and we'll let the people decide if you're a scumbag or not. So he's basically insinuating that I, in the moment, knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly how much EV I'd be gaining by the time that the action guy offered to run it twice. Me then snap offering the other two guys is quite literally a fraction of a % of EV, and he's hoping that I would do that in that spot.
Do you know what that equates to dollar-wise in this situation?
I don't know, but I'll fucking give it back to him. I don't care.
Well, you should, because it's probably somewhere around a big blind to the two players that were all in.
Yeah, and he started saying to
it's like $5
to the two Rex. He's like, oh yeah, he just stole $100 of EV from
no
you.
shot.
He's like, it's 5%. Per player,
right? Like
I
no
swear
shot.
to God, that's what he said. He said he just stole $100 from you.
Yeah, it's just like it's just literally no shot. There's no way it could ever be that much when you're getting laid 7.5 to 1. Like you just don't have to have that much equity to call off. So like his fold equity with the $1,300 is so incredibly low.
Henry folded $100 once.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You could be making some pretty big mistakes.
That's true.
Okay, so now there's a whole other argument.
It might be
here.
like $15.
Right.
See, Henry, if you just called $100, I don't have that to say.
You know what? I'm back on Team Lars. You actually may have robbed these people of thousands of dollars.
Thousands.
Based off the fact that
thousands of dollars.
You might be folding like 80%.
I'm folding Queen Jack just in case he's got fucking queens.
Exactly. Like no straight, no deal, man.
No straight, no
dice.
date, baby.
Yeah, no straight, no date. We're out of here. Okay, so Team Lars might be onto something. But all jokes aside, like the actual reality is, if Henry stole somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2% of the pot away from the people who are all in, that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like what, $20?
Yeah,
maybe less.
Honestly, I sleep like a baby. I've had dealers from the area text me within the last like 6 hours, and that's all I care about. All I care about is the interactions I have with the majority of players, the dealers, the floor staff, the cocktail waitresses, whatever. As far as nit-reg European shitheads go, fuck them.
Fuck it, we ball, baby.
Seriously, man. Just like...
Okay, now this is the point where we're leveraging the platform incorrectly.
All right.
We're going to go 0 days without nonsense. So we're going to move on.
I understand this. I understand the frustration from both. And here's the reason why I wanted to have this conversation. Because in years past, I very much would have not had patience for this. And as the game is evolving, I'm starting to try to at least be a better moderator of two different worlds, so to speak. I don't know Lars. I don't know anything about him, but as best I can tell, he probably comes from an online background where this stuff is not a thing.
Doesn't exist,
right?
Yeah.
It's automated, right? So these things will never occur outside of people being in each other's DMs or on Skype card
I
sharing
was
and
gonna say,
cheating.
there's a nice Discord group for that. Don't worry.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I'm sure he's had way more EV stolen from him just simply through minor technologies than what happened in this actual
The
pod.
Discord's called Morality for Everybody, No EV Stealing at All
Right.
Discord.
But the point I'm trying to get to is that people think about things very differently, especially when it comes to money, right? Personally, I've always 90% of my time has been spent in the live venue. And you know, the quote unquote art of negotiation is a big byproduct of live poker, in my opinion, right? So this stuff comes up all the time. I've seen business done like this in high stakes all the fucking time, literally all the time, and it happens in the blink of an eye, right? I've seen bets given back that you know, didn't deserve to be given back. I've seen pots split that weren't meant to be split. I've seen this trick run a lot by Rex, where it's a massive bet and a call, and then the rec goes, "Do you want to chop it?"
Yeah.
Right?
I told someone they had a straight flush once, and I got yelled at for it. So
Yeah.
So,
And
no more of that.
And like, you know, when the rec does this, when the rec goes like, you know, "Do you want to chop it?" Usually it's because they got caught bluffing and they're just trying to get EV back off of you, right?
Normally it's not the pro that's going to do
But
stuff like that.
sometimes they are just like taking a little bit of, or showing a little bit of grace to somebody that they know is overextended. You know, something along those lines, where they're like, you know, "I'm nutted, but this board, like, you could easily have a combo draw here and I don't want to get sucked out on. Do you want to just chop it?" That type of thing.
And it's never going to be equal, right? You're never going to be able to set a precedent or like a rule for all of these things in the private scene or
even in the public,
in the discourse.
Yes, even in the public scene, like, there's nothing Henry could have done to stop this man from asking if he wanted to run it twice. And once that dam is broken, the whole thing unfolds.
Right. As soon as he's about to speak to Henry, you can't say, "Yo, don't speak to me, man."
Right.
Hold up.
And
Let him cook. Let him cook.
Now, I do understand, like, from Lars's perspective, it's like, well, maybe we as pros could do a better job of messaging that, like, this is not okay. But my issue with that is then all games suck.
Yeah,
Right?
now you're taking away the fun.
What he's asking for is a game that just sucks. If everybody in the game is overly passionate and concerned about ensuring that not one shred of EV is ever unfairly distributed, the game just goes to shit, because a lot of the antics do that. Now, usually it's the person involved in the antics. Like in this instance, the person giving up the EV here is not Henry, and it's not even the players who are all in. It's the guy with 1,300 behind who has aces that could have protected his hand or earned more.
I'm giving up EV in that spot.
Not really.
Well, I am, because like if it comes like ace deuce deuce or whatever ace high, I just like fold, obviously. But if I like have straights or two pair or whatever,
Oh, right, because you're not value jamming. Like you ended up with the nuts and you didn't jam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like,
yes.
In that spot, like I think that I'm actually costing myself EV, especially my hand multi-way.
Sure.
In that spot, I have the most equity going into the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like you flop nuts versus guy with side pot but agree to check down when you actually don't have to do anything is kind of fucking you over a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is all so crazy.
That's why I get invited to private games, and even the guy that I stacked, the guy that said you can't run it twice, you have money behind, afterwards he was literally like, "To be fair, you do give a lot of action," and that's coming from like a recreational player who knows that I'm a pro.
Right.
He's like, "You are good for the game, you do give a lot of action."
Right.
I was like chatting with him for like an hour.
Like, I think it's easy for a outsider to maybe look at that spot and think, "Oh, the pro is definitely trying to get the best of it here," and then use that as like a precedent when sometimes it's just not the case.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with looking at things in a vacuum.
Right.
It's like as an isolated incident, this obviously just like doesn't sit well with the quote unquote rules, right? But whenever you play live poker, this shit just happens all the time, and that's the overarching point that I wanted to kind of address is that you don't want to over police a game. Yes, I want to stop the nit from seat hopping on the on the recreational over and over and over again, because that's stealing EV. It's not. Here's the thing: it's not even stealing EV. He's playing by the rules.
Yeah.
Right. That's the contradiction that we're dealing with. We should never allow that to happen because it's so fucking predatory.
Yeah, and
right?
that's what he justifies doing, by the way.
Basically, anything egregious shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
but that's within the rules. Like he's allowed to bum hunt the Rex at the Aria or casinos. He's allowed to leave once he's been asked to go to the main game where all the regs are, and then put his name back onto the list, rejoin the feeder table where all the fish are. You know, it's just like, I don't know. How do you protect against something like that? You can't.
Right. So I guess like that's what I'm ultimately saying is that these ecosystems are meant to be self-policed in a big way. And I do think it's important that like both sides are heard. I think he thinks about the game very differently than people who are like from the live realm. We kind of recognize that it is this community. It's a lot more of a collaborative, cooperative environment than online, which is super cutthroat. And in a super cutthroat, winner-take-all type of environment, it's very critical that the rules are enforced because nefarious action is the easiest way to ensure that you're the winner who takes all, right? In the live realm, nefarious action is very difficult to even
get away with.
Yeah, it's very difficult to even get away with. You have like 8 to 9 watchful eyes on you, as well as cameras and all this other stuff. Right. And it's so goddamn slow that it's not necessarily even rewarded, right? Because you have to find yourself in an opportune situation to even do it. So like to be pre-programmed somehow to think that like you can angle in this particular spot. And by the way, like if it's any form of cheating, it's angling, not collusion, because collusion implies premeditation. Right. There can't be like an after the fact collusion effect because two strangers have decided that it's in their best interest to check down. This happens in tournaments all the time. It's an unspoken thing where you're on the money bubble, one guy's all in, and there's chips left behind between two players and no side pot. What the fuck do you think is going to happen?
Right. It's kind of a natural byproduct of multi-way pots. Is like there's collusion happening effect where you try to sandwich somebody in between, and it's kind of beneficial for the people putting in chips because now the guy in between is kind of fucked.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of part of the game. Like, and with the whole cheating thing in a live arena, you also, if you get caught, can have actual implications towards your future bottom line. Right? We're online, like if you might be able to get banned, but there's still ways to get around it.
Yeah, which we're all too aware of.
Yup.
GG ACR pool.
Let them cook.
Let them cook. The chefs are in the fucking kitchen, man. They got multiple accounts out there doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a legend for investing so much time into this, but again, I just want to reiterate, 2023, year of no drama going forward.
Yeah. 0 days since last nonsense.
Well, to be fair, I don't care about the drama.
Matt Berkey.
No. I mean, I truly don't care that you two were arguing and having a pissing match in each other's DMs. Whoa. I do care that.
Let him cook though.
Hang on a minute.
I do care that these.
I was in bed.
Sliding in. You were in bed sliding in. No, but I do care that there will be people in live settings that will come across things like this and view it two very different ways, and we should be very slow to accuse.
Yeah, I think the premise is cool, right? Because maybe someone that's listening hears the conversation and then someone is about to talk to them like in multi-way pot, something like this. It's like, hey, like I think it's best that we just don't talk about this at all.
Yeah, and I would be curious like what he would have said if the fourth player in the hand would have agreed to run it twice. Like at that point he just has to be okay with it, right?
There's no issue at that point.
At that point, if everyone agrees to run it twice, just check down both boards.
No, you just run it twice. The dealer's not going to interfere. They don't give a shit.
But does Henry and the other guy still have a side pod?
Well,
yeah, they just table their hands.
By the way, and I didn't mention this because now that you've said that, it was Lars, by the way, who originally made the other guy aware that we weren't allowed to do that. The other guy hadn't said anything. The first guy with the 9943 single said yes. Lars then chimes up and says, you're not allowed to do that. And it's only when he says that the other recreational that was all in for 500 then said, no, you're not allowed to do that. You have money behind.
Right.
And he's now trying to lean. Sorry, go on, Conrad.
He's not wrong for saying that. Like
he's not
wrong for saying that
I think he is.
But it's not his money. He's not in the pot. And he's like trying to.
Correct.
He's trying to like white knight it and like take this moral high ground that he was doing it to look after the Rex, which is just nonsense. And I just don't trust anyone that pretends to do that stuff.
Also, if you're truly concerned about the pool itself, situations like this where it's more beneficial for the entire ecosystem and those two recreationals to run this board twice
100%
than it is for you to fold your hand.
100%.
Like, fold your hand 5% of the time.
Yep.
I just find myself in like a situation where I would like just yell out the rule like, yo, you can't do that. It's
no, but
like,
I disagree with that though. I think like doing business in pots like this are completely reasonable, and at that point the dam has already been broken, right? Like once it's already been offered, now they're already going to suffer because this fourth player has offered to run it twice. So they're already suffering. They're already going to lose that EV because there's nothing that can be done to police anything moving forward.
No,
so you might as well let
at
them.
that point, it's just like hands off, like whatever. But I'm just saying, like,
But
I
you're
just
saying
find myself in. I
you're
would
saying
just
you would
like
have chimed in.
black and say you can't do that. Like you shouldn't do that in the future. Like I don't like whatever. Do whatever you want, but
I mean, you could say that maybe after the business is done, if you want.
Yeah.
But even then, I wouldn't bother because it's like, in my opinion, when it comes down to doing business at the table, only the parties involved should be involved in the conversation, right? Unless something super scummy is happening.
Yeah. And I said it to him, and he said, "Well, what if a shooter came in? Would I not do anything? Or what if my neighbor?" I swear on my grandfather's grave, he literally snap responded, "If a shooter came in, would you expect me to not do anything? Or if my neighbor was getting robbed, would you not do?" Like, I'm honestly getting like super pumped up now. I just want to.
No drama.
Let's
No
go,
drama.
Jim. Let's go, Jim. Seriously, this guy.
Pump some iron.
So I'm gonna stack him. So
Oh man, yeah. All this is pretty wild.
4 hours sleep. All right.
That's
You had a great show prepared today as well.
We're still going to do a great show. We've already started. We're well into a great show.
It's busting for real.
The only thing that we're obviously going to gloss over now is what happened in the NFL yesterday, which
Yes.
I don't want to talk too deeply about because this is Strat Chat, and we're well into the Strat Chat. But for those who were paying attention to the Monday night game yesterday, it was suspended. I gotta talk about this. It was my man. He's a Yinzer through and through. From McKees Rocks, suffered.
Damar Hamlin.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't even realize I didn't say his name.
That's right.
Damar Hamlin, safety for the Bills. He suffered. Is it officially diagnosed?
It's not.
Okay,
it's
so
not,
it's still speculation.
It's just speculation. You can pronounce it because
Commotio cordis.
yeah. This is most likely what happened. This is what occurs to like healthy athletes when they get hit in the chest in a certain way in the right exact time of the cycle of the heart pumping. It causes VFib, which I think is vertical fibrillation, which can cause the heart to start beating irregularly, and which will eventually cause a cardiac arrest.
Yeah, so
we do know he was in cardiac arrest,
right,
and they did have to use a defibrillator to shock him to get his heart back. So it only makes sense that this is the most likely scenario. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, this happens. I won't say commonly within sports, but it does happen. There are a few other examples of it. I believe
Christian Eriksen.
I don't know who that is. Soccer player
in Euros. Like the exact same thing happened where he just collapsed on the pitch, and the entire world was watching. And
did he get hit in the chest?
He just like been shoulder barged in soccer, and
right.
He just like collapsed.
Like this wasn't a violent play that happened last night. It was just a routine kind of play. Brought to you by. I don't know what that was, but so it's like, I mean, this happens in baseball too. Obviously, very rarely, but maybe a pitcher or somebody takes a baseball to the chest. It can happen. It's so rare, and it's just.
Yeah, this happened to Chris Pronger a few years back in hockey. He took a slap shot to the chest. I think we actually have a clip of it, and then just like collapses on the ice.
I think it is too much.
No.
Hands it across, big drive, and that one blocked and into the equipment of Jeff Portnoy, and another penalty coming up.
And Detroit's going to have a two-man advantage for 10 seconds. Pronger could be hurting here, guys. He took the slap shot into the chest. This isn't funny. There's a problem here. He took the slap shot into the chest. The trainer's out there quickly, and you can see with that slap shot into his ribs and chest, he's having some problems. And here comes John Wharton from the Detroit bench, just very serious. And then he moved out, and he took a slap shot really high off the chest. Right here it comes. Boom, yeah. The left side of his chest near his heart. You can see he's breathing there, and it looks like he's gotten a lot of attention immediately from both teams. And I couldn't be happier for the amount of.
Yeah, so.
Why did people start cheering when he fell?
I think they were cheering there was a fight.
Oh. It was like, oh my God.
So I think I was watching a doctor explain this yesterday on, I think it was Twitter. There was a video that was shared. Basically what happens is, basically what Brian explained, that it throws off the rhythm of the heart. And instead of like having a powerful squeeze that will send blood through, it starts to like flutter, and that leads to cardiac arrest. They usually have to defib. And the last update I saw was that he was in the hospital and he was breathing on his own, which seems to be a good sign.
I didn't see that. Was that recent?
Yeah, one of his friends was tweeting updates.
Yeah, I saw that he was intubated.
Yeah,
so he's not intubated anymore. He is breathing on his own.
I don't know if he's still intubated or not.
Yeah, I think that's a big. That's why I just want to make sure that's correct, because going from being intubated and breathing on your own is a huge step forward. Yeah, which we hope is the case.
The prognosis is good. Obviously, if this is what he's diagnosed with, Pronger went on to play 12 more seasons and was back 2 weeks later.
That's amazing. I mean, if that's the outcome, that's the best thing they could ever hope for.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But yeah, who knows? Like, it could have been something else. Like, there could be an underlying condition. We don't really know. But yeah, huge wishes for him on a speedy recovery. Don't know what this is going to do to the NFL. Doesn't look like they're going to have time to make this game up.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not that this is a big concern. Obviously, like everyone, we're concerned about as far as health, but yeah, it's a scheduling nightmare. But it's like they'll figure it out. Whatever happens, if they have to cancel one game and then adjust accordingly to the new records, then that's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that they push the playoffs back a week because I think that this game has pretty massive implications for the playoffs.
Right.
It's the Buffalo Bills are playing for the 1 seed. If they don't play this game, they go from being a favorite to be the 1 seed to like pretty huge dog.
Yeah.
As the Chiefs play the Raiders, and they would need a Chiefs loss there. And then for Cincinnati, it's obviously for the division, where if they were to lose that game and then play, they would be playing the Ravens for the division next week. So it does have playoff implications applied to it. Also, as a selfish Steeler fan, I need the Bills to be playing really tough against New England. So my hopes are that they don't make it up this week. They push the playoffs back a week. That way, this game, Buffalo playing New England next week, is very meaningful, and they just get after it. And honestly, that might be what they intend on doing, is seeing the result of the Bills New England game and the Bengals Ravens game. And if it falls favorably,
where like it doesn't matter,
like if the Bills lose to the Patriots or the Bengals beat the Ravens, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if it does matter, then maybe they make it up. Who knows? Little break there from some poker strat, but we're gonna get back into the thick of things. And move a little bit off of the soft skills on the felt to the soft skills off the felt. And honestly, the reason why I said that I thought Henry's scenario was relevant is because this is going to go into a lot of the soft skills that you run into on the felt. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience on Live at the Bike towards the end of the year and how those soft skills can be detrimental whenever you're a little bit too accommodating, right? So I retweeted a thread, and for what it's worth, I think that these are really, I don't know if helpful is the right word, but I think it's really important to highlight the times that our industry is kind of put on display by people outside of the industry. It kind of really resonates with everybody else that poker is a practical sandbox for a lot of these mathematics that occur in everyday life, in the real world, in other arenas and things of that nature. So this account, 10K Diver, who is based off of his own definition on his Twitter page, is heavily into finance and investing, and he puts out these educational threads. Has just shy of 300K followers, puts out these educational threads kind of demonstrating the math that underlies in these arenas, right? And, when we think about gambler's fallacy, gambler's ruin, the first thing that comes to mind for us is poker and bankroll management and things of that nature, right? But we forget that there's a whole other world out there that is doing this on the regular. And it's not within the constructs of a game. It's, more so within the constructs of life. The first time I learned the term gambler's fallacy was actually baseball. Right, because we had the do theory, and do theory is just
what?
Do theory.
Do theory.
Like he's due.
You've never heard of the do theory?
I know that people say that they're due to win a tournament and
Yeah,
stuff.
That's the do
that's
theory.
the do theory.
And in baseball, it's like
it's nonsense, is what it is.
You're overdue, mate. That's
way overdue.
Yeah, where's my wins?
In baseball, it's a way that we try to humanize, statistical anomalies and these runs of positive and negative variance.
Guy's 0 for 4 and he's coming up for his 5th at bat. It's like he's due. He's due. He's going to get a hit more often than he normally would.
Here's the thing. It always leads to positive outcomes. We have due theory in baseball and we have the hot streak.
Yeah.
Right? So if a guy's hot, you obviously got to get him more plate appearances because he's seeing the ball really well and he's going to hit well above his average. If he's due, then he needs to regress to the mean.
I think the former has a little bit more merit to it. Right?
No, it's heavily disproven. The hot hand theory in basketball has been like largely disproven by statistical analysis.
What about in poker? When you're just flopping sets,
you got to play the rush, man.
So you got to play the rush, man.
They're both the same for the same reason.
Being locked in is not a thing.
No.
Locked in, baby. It's definitely a thing. We saw Joey do it. You got to be locked in.
I'm always locked in.
The hot hand theory and due theory, or gambler's fallacy, both suffer from the exact same thing. And what ultimately disproves both of them is the regression to the mean. So the person who's due will eventually start to perform because they're currently underperforming either via variance or whatever reason, and they'll regress to the mean and arrive at what they should be performing at. Same thing with the hot hand theory. If you catch a streaky shooter, eventually he's going to regress to the mean and shoot his natural percentage. Right?
There's a reason why the numbers are what they are.
Yeah.
Correct. So variance always will correct, and anytime you zoom in on a data subset, you'll see streaks, right? It's just like flipping a coin. You'll see streaks of heads and streaks of tails, but when you zoom out over 10,000 flips, you're just going to see a 50-50 distribution.
Like fantasy football analysis uses this as well, because people like want to play a person because of what they did in the past few games, when it's just like no, or not play somebody.
Correct.
It's like, I'm going to sit this guy who's a stud this week because he's not been performing the last 2 weeks. When then you sit him, and then Mike Evans happens and wins a championship.
We're always going to take things that we think make sense to fit into our boxes and patterns of reality.
Well, there is a sublayer to all of this that is worth something, and that's like kind of the behavioral economics of things. And when you're talking about like fantasy football, there are decisions by the coaches, or baseball or anything else. There are decisions made by the coaches that actually can dissuade you from playing somebody who is streaking negatively.
Oh, right, because somebody's due, or whatever. Like they will or won't play because of these things that do impact you.
Lead them to not play them as much, which is why you shouldn't play the
Exactly. Right. So if a coach is susceptible to the logical fallacy that this guy is underperforming, he might get benched or he might get fewer looks, right? If a quarterback is susceptible to look for the guy as a first read who has the hot hand, or if a basketball coach is trying to force the ball to a streaky shooter.
That's the metagame, baby.
Right. So like now you are you're navigating in behavioral economics in that regard. And that's true of all markets too, right? Whenever you're looking, we talked a lot with Dan while we were up in Tahoe. A lot of what they have to figure out whenever they're doing, day trades and trying to figure out how the market is going to move is what's the pulse of the retail trader. Right? Like, what's the pulse of all the dumb money?
So you do have to be locked in.
You do kind of have to be locked in. Yeah.
You got to be locked into the meta.
Mate, Dan is definitely locked in. What a guy.
Bro, he's just
Jesus, I love that guy.
Just snowed in forever trying to
locked in.
He just has the dream life, just the dream setup. I absolutely love that.
That's why he's fucking Uncle Dan, man.
Yeah, man. He just got his big screens, day trading, watching the markets.
Uncle Dan getting after it. Okay, so to dig into this thread a little bit, let's talk about what the gambler's ruin is. And I guess to give a precursor to this, it's very important to know what Kelly criteria is. So Kelly criterion is a formula that basically will allow you to calculate how much risk you can take on without ruining yourself. It's a risk of ruin calculator to make it short.
Incredibly important in sports betting.
Yes. Also incredibly important in poker, but a little bit more difficult to apply.
Right.
And the reason being is because, number one, you need to know your win rate.
Which is hard to know empirically.
Well, it's hard to know one-off specifically, right? So if you have data, you can figure out what your long-term win rate is. Like,
Right.
I have an idea of what my long-term win rate is in live cash.
Assuming the pool is the same.
Exactly.
Or on
That's
an
the
aggregate?
problem.
Right. 'cause
Mine-
online, you can do it.
Right. Mine's on an aggregate of 20 years.
Exactly.
So it's just like the 5-10 game that I was playing in 2007 is not the same 5-10 game that I would play today. So
I would like to play the 5-10 game from 2007.
yes, you would. So like it's difficult. It's difficult to have accurate estimations there.
Yeah.
And try to figure out how exactly this formula is going to allow you to calculate risk. But, you could do some certain things to kind of look at a conservative estimate versus an aggressive estimate and then try to generate an average.
You can try to find the boundaries, but at the same point, it's going to be a guess where it's less.
What really makes it a guess is that in poker, the times that you're going to do this the most are situations where you're shot taking.
Right.
So you want to figure out the Kelly criteria of how much exposure can I take in this 1K, 2K game when I'm only rolled to play 200, 400.
Right. And just inherently, for most, there's going to be some form of overestimation of what the win rate actually is because you're shot taking in the first place.
Correct.
Right. Because now you're playing a game you're not normally playing because the spot is so good you can't pass it up, which means your win rate has to be higher, which means you need to have more of yourself in order for it to be worth it. But at the same time, you might be overestimating and fuck yourself.
You're almost certainly overestimating because the way win rate works is it's not linear in nature.
I'm just being nice.
Yeah. Well, two things happen. It's not linear and it's not exponential. It's kind of the opposite. There's a diminishing return as win rate starts to increase past a certain degree, right? So if your natural win rate is, I don't know, say, I don't even really know how to like properly quantify this, but like say you have some edge in a game, right? Like you have a 10% edge over the field, or you have an expected 10% ROI. When there's an influx of, let's say we're talking tournaments, right? So you play a tournament field, a normal 10K, and let's say 20% of it is recreational money, and you have a 10% ROI. And now you go play the WSOP main event, and let's say now there's 4 times as many recreational, so 40% of the field is now recreational money. You don't have a 40% ROI necessarily.
No.
Right? And this may not even be the proper demonstration because I'm giving you ROIs that are so small that it's reasonable that you actually might have greater than a 40% ROI in the main event, right? Mm-hmm. But if we say like you have a 100% ROI in a 10K, you certainly don't
have a 400%.
Right. Yeah. There's a point where there's a drop off and a diminishing return type of scenario where it's like, okay, well, it sounds like you're probably one of the best 10K players in the world, and the best 10K player in the world certainly has a high ROI in the main event.
Right.
But the variance of there being such a large field, of there being so much recreational play, et cetera, means that you're probably just going to be capped out at whatever the ceiling is for ROIs.
Like nobody can have a 10,000% ROI.
Well, that's kind of the main idea, right? Is that there is a ceiling, and that's finite.
Yes.
Like there is a number.
Like if it was just you and 7,000 recreationals, you don't suddenly have.
You'll win the tournament X 1,000% of the time.
Right. You don't suddenly have 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000% ROI, right? Like
you just have a high ROI.
You have a high ROI, right? So it's like the Kelly criteria then starts to break down a little bit because the biggest asset that this formula offers us is for sports bettors, like Henry was saying, it allows them a formulaic approach to risk. And we desperately need that as human beings because we're naturally risk averse. And those of us who are not, that are very risk on, overdo it, right? We just press and press and press until eventually we ruin ourselves. And that's something that also kind of, that's a corollary to the gambler's ruin, right? It's the idea of the parallel to the gambler's ruin is the martingale system, where if you are able to bet infinite and you have an infinite bankroll to do so, you will have a very, very, very small edge realized, right? So people think the martingale system is a way to like beat the house for a large number. It's actually not. It's just a way to ensure that you lose the minimum, or not lose the minimum, but like,
you don't go broke.
Yes, that your risk is actually reduced to zero.
Well, theoretically, you can't go broke because you have infinite money.
Correct. But your risk is actually zero if the cap is lifted, because you'll always be able to put in the next bet,
right?
And that will always have a positive ROI. But that ROI is so like it trends towards zero the larger the bet scale.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
That's why at roulette tables they have like max bets and that.
Yeah, every floor game has a max bet, so you can't do that.
Right. But
Infinite bet, yeah.
Jeff Bezos comes in and tries to just get that like half a percent.
He's locked in.
So
Slamming the bet button.
So the reason why I mentioned the martingale system is because scenarios like this will actually present in game. And I think what happened at Live at the Bike is a pretty great example of gamblers ruin kind of in isolation in a vacuum scenario, so to speak, right? So I have a bankroll. I have an amount of money that I live off of, that I play off of, and all this other stuff. It's not the same amount that I take with me when I travel to LA, right? I'm on a fixed income whenever I go there. Now, of course, there's some borrowing power, but even that's restricted because everybody's playing in a big game and everybody needs some level of liquidity available to them, right?
Right. You don't just have what you want.
Right. So when I was invited to the game, it was 100, 200, but I knew that I'm not an idiot. I knew and was prepared to play a much larger game because Eric Persons was involved, and we can understand that like the game is going to tend to play bigger.
Yeah.
Now the requirements were that it was a 200K minimum buy-in. So I took 400K, or I took 300 and I borrowed 100. So I basically had 2 buy-ins. But if the blinds remain at 1-2, 1-2-4, or even just 2-4 with an ante, whatever, that's pretty reasonable. Like 10 buy-ins at 200, 400 for, basically 16 hours of play over 2 days. Your risk of ruin there, assuming you have like a reasonable edge, is going to be very low, right? Like that's going to, without having run the Kelly criteria, I'm probably able to take a pretty aggressive piece of myself in this scenario.
This is assuming the min buy-in's not 200K?
What?
Like you're saying if you have 400K with you and you're playing 1-2-4.
Your risk is obviously higher whenever you're sitting with this much, but it's still difficult to just put in 1,000 big blinds.
Right.
I'm coming from this from the stance that if you were playing 100 big blinds deep and had 10 buy-ins, that's way different than sitting with it.
He would have the risk of ruin would be a lot less if that was the case, but it's still a lot less just sitting with the 200 and having 1,000 big blinds compared to sitting with. I would
imagine that the risk of ruin isn't very different. The variance is just different. The variance on 100 big blinds versus the variance on 1,000 big blinds, it just comes down to strategy.
With the difference in variance, the risk of ruin doesn't change?
I'm saying that there's very high variance when you're sitting 100 blinds deep.
There's also a high variance. And there's
variance should lessen the deeper you get.
For getting stacked, potentially, but like if you get nuts versus second nuts, where like you just can't find a fold, right? And now you just you lose a gigapot.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
Those scenarios present themselves, but like it's difficult for all the money to go in, even nuts versus second nuts. And B, that's just like fringe variant scenarios that most pots are going to fall within a standard distribution of amount of big blinds put in.
The only reason why I say something like that is because under normal constraints, I would agree. But then with sizes being way different in a live arena, especially when games play bigger, it's definitely a lot easier for the money to go in than what looks to be like an 1,000 big blind pot.
But that actually ramps up the variance when you're 100 blinds effective too. When fold equity is reduced and stack off thresholds are lessened, right? Think of it this way. If the stack off threshold at 100 big blinds is comparable to the stack off threshold at 50 big blinds, is the variance greater than or less than a normal 100 big blind game?
The variance in itself would be less, right? For the 100, like if you have 100 big blinds, but the stack off threshold's the same. It'd be greater because you're putting in more money.
Correct. Yeah. So when sizes ramp up and 100 big blinds are effectively fewer practical big blinds than they would be if sizes were smaller, variance is going to increase. Right?
Man, it's weird. I think maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, but like if you see it as like having 10 buy-ins, right, where you're sitting with 100 big blinds 10 times. So if you lose an all-in, you now like reload and have 9 buy-ins.
Yeah.
Or if you sit with 500 and you have 2 of those, and you get into a spot where you're all in for 500, where in the normal situation, like those stack off thresholds are different. You're now playing bigger pots when you are all in.
Yeah, but you're thinking about it. You're trying to apply a long-term view to a short-term scenario. What's the probability that happens twice over 2 500 big blind buy-ins?
I mean, if it was anything like the WPT cash game, like chips just flew, right?
Right, but like what I'm saying is like
stand-up games involved, people trying to put more money in.
You're not answering my question. I'm saying you present something very specific and then you drift off into something far less. I'm saying what is the likelihood of nuts versus second nuts happening twice when you're 500 big blinds effective?
Nuts is relative. I mean, that in this instance is very rare, right?
Right, that's the point.
But nuts and stack off thresholds versus people that are playing more hands become wider than nuts versus second nuts.
Sure, but if you reduced it now to having 10 100 big blind buy-ins, the same would hold true. You would be all in all the time.
Yeah.
The variance is comparable. It's high. It's just high in both scenarios.
So you would rather sit with 2 buy-ins of 500 bigs than
I think my
10 buy-ins
win
of
rate is
100
higher.
bigs?
I think my win rate is higher with 2 buy-ins of 500 bigs, but I think my ability to play the entire 16 hours is lower.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking if you had call it 10 buy-ins of 100 bigs, it's more likely that you're going to see
You'll
the
get
long
to
term.
yes, agreed.
Okay.
Would that mean your
but the
risk of
long-term
ruin is higher? Slightly higher?
It's tough to say. Probably not, because you're winning so much more money in theory whenever you're deeper, right? You're risking more in the near term. But yeah, maybe because like
this is kind of, we're off on like a side thing here.
It's hard to theory craft these things in real time.
Right.
The main point I think you were trying to make is that is that like playing with those stakes at 2-4 is going to be much different than playing those stakes at 5,000.
Well, that's what it ultimately comes down to when I'm talking about like kind of martingaling it, so to speak. And this plays back to what Landon was saying. So now, if we run the same comparison where the blinds are doubling every couple of hours, right? Your risk of ruin is continually increasing, right? So it'd be like running a Kelly criteria calculator or calculation for certain levels of MTTs, right? So whether my 200,000 was all in play or only going to be in play 20K at a time, if the blinds are continually escalating, the variance is going to escalate right alongside with it. Right. So if I have 20K in front of me and we're playing 100, 200, and then 2 hours later we're playing 248, well, now I suddenly only have 30 big blinds, right? And if I have 200K in front of me, what was once 1,000 big blinds is now 300 big blinds.
Yeah, you can think of it as like every single person in a tournament reaches risk of ruin at some point, except one person.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, where that changes is if you have infinite money, right? So if you're the person pressing and trying to continually escalate the blinds, in this instance, it was Persons and Andy, and the reason is because they have the most liquidity available to them.
Right.
It's funny because when people that don't really know poker that well sometimes hit you with but don't you not want to play with them because they just have more money than you, are kind of right in very extreme situations.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is one of those extreme situations where the people with all of the money will be able to realize.
So it's a give and take. It's a give and take because on one hand, Eric is offering, like he's distributing the largest amount of EV to the table.
Yeah.
So
he's gambling.
Right. So our win rate is increasing exponentially based off the fact that he's in the game.
And there's a fixed time limit. It's not infinite.
Correct. But there's a fixed time limit anyway because we can't afford to play infinite.
Right. I just mean like there's 16 hours and you're going home.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're just going to stay there forever, maybe he kind of does have it.
Okay. So this is what this thread really exemplifies, and I think it does a great job of it. So it breaks it down into a very practical scenario. And it says, I like to think of Gambler's Ruin similar to the David and Goliath battle. And in this instance, David is the quote-unquote small player, and he only has a limited amount of resources, but he's very skilled. He's pitted against Goliath, who is the quote-unquote big player, who has many more resources, but far less skill. The battle between David and Goliath rages on for several rounds. Each round has a quote-unquote winner, either David or Goliath. David, because of his superior skill, has a higher probability of winning any individual round.
Right.
That's David's advantage over Goliath. But because of the size asymmetry between the players, the loss of a round impacts David more than it does Goliath. And that's what we saw here at Live at the Bike. When I lose, I'm out. I'm eliminated. When Eric loses, he reloads. So he gets to play more rounds, right? And even though he may be playing those rounds at a negative skill edge, he still gets to play enough of them to recoup his losses.
Right.
When I lose, my positive skill edge is now vanquished, right? It's done. It's 0 because I'm out of the game completely. And that is like the great leveler here. So he breaks this down into a practical example. He says, let's take an example. Suppose David brings $2,000 to the table and Goliath brings 10. At the start of the game, Goliath's bankroll is 5x David's. That's his size advantage, okay? Offsetting this, David has a skill advantage. So let's say that he wins any one particular round 55% of the time to Goliath's 45%. So he has a 10% skill edge. Pretty significant. Why are you cringing?
I mean, it's significant, but for all intents and purposes, it's not like you're going to be able to see the end goal, like the end result of like stacking Goliath.
I mean,
enough, right?
Well, that's the point of the math, but
Right.
like a 10% skill edge
It's a lot.
in a
It's a
gambling environment is massive.
Yeah.
Right.
Massive. Like you
You're
die
cringing.
for these types of edges.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Casinos have like a 1 to 2% edge.
Yeah, empires have been built off less like smaller edges than that.
Correct. Yeah. So he says, let's say each round costs the loser $1,000. So for David, he's risking half of his bankroll anytime that he plays a round.
This is where the cringe came in.
For Goliath, he's risking 10% of his bankroll anytime that they sit down. So with these rules, we can see that Goliath only needs 2 rounds to go in his favor in order to wipe out David. Now, there's a caveat to this because that's not entirely true. That's only true of the first 2 rounds.
Right, because if David wins, he now has more
he
of a
has
chance to
9.
put his edge in play. But in poker, it's different because the money stays on the table.
Correct. But where this does matter is for David to wipe out Goliath, he has to win 10 more rounds. And so that's the qualifying language that was left out of this. What he meant to say was Goliath needs to win 2 more rounds than David in order to wipe him out.
Right.
David needs to win 10 more rounds than Goliath in order to wipe him out. And that therein lies the gambler's ruined puzzle. Now, in poker, we don't care about wiping each other out, specifically in cash, right? So I don't need to win 10 more rounds than Eric in order to show a profit. I just need to win more rounds than Eric. But basically, like when you break this equation down, what you'll see is that if you play long enough, I'll lose 2 rounds in a row at some point.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as that happens, I'll lose 2 more rounds.
Right. I was going to say the theoretical rounds. And, well, because there is a difference between being a capped and uncapped losses, right?
Yeah.
Just inherently. Like, you can win X amount more hands than Eric, but he beats you, he coolers you and stacks you, you're out. Right? You wins 1 game.
Yeah.
Instead of winning 2 more.
Well, that's the other thing.
or
In
whatever.
poker, it's not fixed to...
Right.
Right? As long as he covers.
Yeah.
I could be wiped out at any given point.
Right. That's kind of where I was cringing.
But so if you win early, though, as you get deeper, your skill edge is much more realized throughout the duration, right?
Yeah.
So if you turn 200 into 500 and he's turned 1 million into 800, your risk of ruin has now decreased.
Well, we can assume... Well, it depends on like what you have the assumption of Goliath's role is, right? Because at some point, if you have Goliath at a fixed role, he then is the one that gets wiped. And then you can't lose anymore because he's gone.
Right,
You know what I mean?
but even in this scenario, like Goliath is kind of represented by the field, where Eric and Andy are kind of the top dogs because they have the most amount of liquidity.
Sure.
But like as you increase your liquidity in front of you, and there's decreases, you start to cover more of the field.
Yeah.
So you become more of the Goliath than David.
Right.
Right.
You absorb the Goliath position.
Right. What you can't afford to do though is take on any sort of negative variance early on in the session, which forces you to play a different strategy. It forces you to take on different amounts of risk,
Which will inherently decrease edge, or no?
Yes, for sure, and that's the bigger point or bigger conversation that I think we were trying to have is from the outside looking in, you get invited to a game like this where you can afford to take on a certain amount of risk.
Right.
And, I budgeted to take on the risk of playing a 200, 400, 800 game where I'm like properly rolled to play, I don't know, 1-2-ish, 1-2 plus, we'll call it. Right.
Generous.
So I basically took a piece of like a 2-4-8 game and fractioned it down. But I obviously didn't fraction it down because the game is really good. I expect myself to have a high win rate, right? So I didn't fraction it down to the stakes that I'm comfortable playing. Like, let's say for all intent and purposes that my roll is suited for 100, 200. Well, when you get invited to a juicy game, you don't play 100, 200 stakes just because that's what your bankroll dictates. You know, if you look at Kelly criteria, you could be very aggressive. You can maybe play 2, 3, or 4x the stakes that you're properly rolled for. So I positioned myself to take that big of a piece. Well, now we end up playing 1K, 2K, right? So now I'm massively overexposed.
Right. The higher your edge, the higher risk you can take.
Yes, that's
to a point.
That's the trick here, though.
Right.
Is that the edge is not so much more than you believe it to be,
right?
Because your risk of ruin is so incredibly high.
Because now, let's say you think you're accepting a 100, 200 game, but you're playing a 10K, 20K game where you have like, call it 10 bigs or whatever.
Right.
Where it's like, now, sure, you winning in the game, yeah, theoretically, but now you have 10 bigs.
Maybe your edge might be reduced down to like 1%.
Yeah.
It's difficult to have a huge edge at 10 big blinds versus 1,000 big blinds.
Can we talk about leaving the game? And why poker players don't do that? Because you and I have, like, obviously
in a sense of
done this to ourselves a few times now.
Yeah, I mean, I had the option to not play day 2, knowing that I only had 1 buy-in.
Right.
And you know, just speaking with like the people I sell my action to and everything else, is like none of us wanted to pass on the spot. It's too good.
Right.
We just accept that we're gonna get ruined a lot, right? Yeah. And you know, it may not necessarily always be the most financially prudent decision, but if it doesn't truly ruin you in life, then there are risks worth taking. The cautionary tale, I guess, that you're alluding to and that I'm trying to kind of point out is that we can't forecast the future. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes very difficult to look beyond the opportunities being presented to you right now and think that you'll have a better one in the future. Right? So I overexposed myself to this game because it was a very good opportunity and a chance to make a lot of money in the near term, right? But because I wasn't conservative, I may have potentially thwarted myself from playing a good high stakes game in the future. Now, that's probably not true, but at some point it does become true. At some point you take on too much risk to the degree where now you're invited to play a 500 1K game, and in order for you to play, you need to find a way to get free rolled.
I'm thinking more so the upside of taking that spot, the downside of going broke in that spot.
Right. Yes, that's relevant.
Depending on life outside of the game.
That's the point, is the going broke part is, it's not finite when we're talking about like executing some level of bankroll management.
Of course.
Or just access to outside investing after the fact, right? Like you might go broke or whatever, and like now
but be able to replenish.
Exactly.
Right.
And
I think you and I are coming from a place where it's like, especially like you are in a different scenario than I am now. You're kind of where I was 10 years ago, where it's like when you're taking shots and you're overexposing yourself, like you legitimately may not be able to pay rent in a month or two. And that's the future consideration that you have to make, right? Where it's like, what I'm actually talking about is more so you still have this stable foundation of wealth, but now all of a sudden, instead of being rolled to play like 200, 400, you're rolled to play like 50, 100.
Right.
And now you have to dilute your future earnings based off the fact that you can't play as high of stakes as you were previously.
Or like your floor in general for cost of living is low enough that you still have that covered and still have the ability to play the same stakes adjacently anyways, right? But now you have to do it through like a backing deal or through some other sort of way, but you have your stable life things set. Right? Because like there's a difference between functionally broke.
Well,
like
there's always a sacrifice if you're still playing the same stakes and you're giving up more equity.
Right.
So you're not playing the same stakes.
No, but at the same time, you're not also worrying about rent.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of broke, right? Because we talked about the functionally broke versus just actual broke.
Yeah.
Broke adjacent.
Right. Well, we use these loaded terms, but like broke is actually like an improper term for what we're talking about. What we're actually talking about is scale, right? So you're at a certain level of scale when you decide to take this shot, and if you over risk,
right, scale reduction,
you run the risk of having to reduce your scale, and that goes all the way to zero. So like even if you have 30K and you risk 25 of it in a game and go broke, or you know,
go scale reducted.
Yeah. Right. Like now all of a sudden, your future earnings may be the equivalency of broke, because that $5,000 may not actually transfer into any sort of win rate.
Right.
Now your risk of ruin is so incredibly high moving forward that you can't really fundamentally play any stakes.
Yeah. On your own, right? We're barring the assumption that you cannot get money from outside sources or like things of that nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which fortunately, like in your case, Henry's case, like that wouldn't be
low key. We're doing this entire podcast for the benefit of Conrad.
Yo,
Hey, come on.
everyone just relax. I learned the gambler's fallacy, you know?
Did you?
I learned what goes on here, and that's why, you know, I find
that's
fun.
good because we're not talking about the fucking gambler's fallacy, Conrad.
What are we talking about?
Gambler's ruin, which I've probably sent you articles on this no fewer than 10 times, and you have money again.
That's what I meant to say. Gambler's ruin. Same thing, man.
Right.
That's why he looks like he's in a ruined place and we're here.
I'm kind of having a little bit of fun with him, but I have actually had this conversation with him a bunch, and it's a byproduct of like personally having learned the hard way and still going through it. Like Henry's point is very valid, right? It's like, why not make better decisions when you're in this spot? And I think largely what it comes down to is the inability to project the future, right? Like when you're in that exact moment, even though I knew I was overexposed going into day 2 and I could have laid off more, I was already previously overexposed and got whacked the day before, number one.
So you would do.
So I'm going to make...
all right. Well played.
I know, because I thought that he was kind of like,
Stop
well,
here,
it's
Rich.
less of a chance that it's going to happen this time.
That's Rich coming from you.
Well played, Landon. Okay,
I hate everything about you.
we'll give him that one.
No, but it's I'm making an irrational emotional decision, obviously. So that's partly on me. But secondarily, it's one of those things where it's like, if you do run the math and understand that like maybe you go broke in this second session, call it 65% of the time, what then does that do to the future, right? And it's like, well, if you just look at it and say like, well, I played 30 sessions of cash this year. The average stake that I played was like 100, 200. If that's my expectation moving forward, then this will have no impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't foresee is that a WPT 1K, 2K cash game pops up and there's a seat.
Right, you are risking future game.
Right.
I guess you almost have to add in the probability of the future.
You sort of take stock of the possibility of opportunity.
Yeah, the future opportunities.
It's weird because like,
but how do you quantify
right?
that?
It's weird. You should consider the future earning power of your remaining bankroll.
Mm-hmm.
And you should do that, you know, based off of an aggregate of what you expect to play.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to forecast the outliers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to know how many of those 10x stakes you're going to get to play throughout the next year, 2 years, 3 years.
Well, because we sort of know at this point, so to speak, like how many other games of like the WPT 1K2 are running.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like.
But I sometimes I feel like you look at it like, well, you don't know, so you said you should take this shot now. Whereas you could look at the other side and say, well, yeah, you don't know, but maybe it's way more than you expect, so maybe you shouldn't take the shot right now.
The reason to not take the conservative approach is because each time
Speaking like a tortoise.
correct, but each time that opportunity is presented to you, you still have the exact same gambler ruin equation
The
to
next
deal
time.
with.
Yeah.
Right.
What about the time investment though to rebuild? Like you have to take that into consideration.
That's also
at some
true
point,
too.
right? Because like if you recall when I decided to play that French businessman heads up, and then Espen afterwards was like, well, like why didn't you just auto book or like put some stuff like or message people to take some of the risk off of you, because now you have to rebuild back at 5-10 when you don't have access to these 50, 100 game spots. So it's just like, well, the time investment that's going to take you is now going to cost you the better part of 6 months or 8 months or however long it is to rebuild, which is exactly what happened. I had to like spend 8 months rebuilding what I lost.
Sorry, that's pointing out the fatal flaw in taking the opportunity that I was trying to get to whenever you're considering overall bankroll earning potential moving forward.
Right.
But what I'm saying is if it doesn't harm, if you're being responsible enough to where it won't harm your current stake level, the harm is actually coming from scale opportunities. Right. So like, yes, that Espen's right in your case, because you put so much risk on the line that you have to reduce in scale, right? And you have to now drop stakes by, many, many degrees. But if you're putting out a certain level of risk where like you'll still have access to the current games that you play. Maybe you have to give up a smaller piece. Maybe you have to play like 75% of the current stakes that you've been playing or whatever, but your future earning potential isn't harmed that much.
Right. You decrease your floor slightly, where it's like instead of having half in a game, you have 40%.
Right. What you actually want to look at though is like future opportunities of like the softest spots, the outliers, the path altering scenarios.
Right.
And those are almost impossible to project. And the reason why Brian was saying like, well, why not consider it in a way where like maybe you get way more of those spots than you otherwise could anticipate. And the reason being is because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're afforded one opportunity to play 10x the stakes that you usually play or 100 opportunities to play 10x the stakes that you usually play. With accordance to the money that you're operating with, you will still face a very high degree of ruin if you don't lay off all of the risk, right?
Yeah.
So like if you have 100 opportunities, the true corrective measure there is to figure out a way for somebody else to finance it.
Right. You find a way to be able to have like more in some other.
You find a way to be able to take all 100 opportunities.
You find outside investment.
Yeah.
Right. It would be the idea in this situation.
You have to reach scale whenever the volume is available, right? But if you don't have the funding to do so, then somebody needs to fill that void for you.
Right. Because now, right, if you have, call it 500K as a total bankroll and you have 100 opportunities to play, now you have to figure out how to appropriately use that to see the long term,
right?
Which inherently will decrease your overall investment in each game.
Correct. Right. So yeah, if I had a chance to play that exact game 100 times,
right,
I would have taken less risk.
Because and you also know that you now have that in the realm of reality, right? You don't know these things, and you can never know these things as a pro,
right?
Like you can't just create a game.
Well, a good example personally was getting the opportunity to play in Ivey's room for over half a decade.
That's what I was kind of thinking about.
The very first time I played, I had 80% of myself in a game where I was properly rolled to play like 50-100, and we were playing 2-4. So it was
scary already.
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, it's not going to. I'm still going to be rolled to play 50-100 if I miss, right? Like I took. So at the time, I think I had $500,000, and I took. We're playing 2-4, so I took 80K, and I kept I think I kept 50K worth of the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I have 450K the next day, I'm still very rolled to play 50-100.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it didn't change anything. But if I win 150K. Now all of a sudden I can, comfortably shot take a little bit more.
Right, you're increasing your scalability without decreasing much of the downside.
Right, but I also thought it was a one-time opportunity. Right. The second I got invited back, I took less. So now I took like half of myself the next time.
You're like, whoa, I might be able to get to play again.
Right.
And now I need to be responsible.
Right. The third time I got invited back, it was like, okay, I have to hard stop now.
Right. It's like, okay, you're a staple.
Whether I'm a staple or not, this opportunity is clearly at least here.
Right.
And I need to ensure that I'm not putting myself on the line to get whacked if I play the game 10 times.
If you don't adjust, you're just going to be ruined.
That's gambler's ruin in a nutshell, right?
Now he's texted the WhatsApp group chat saying, boys, we're locked in. We're in.
I went way over you guys' head.
I wish I knew you at my age, man.
The boys are like, hold up, let him cook. He's in Ivey's room. Let's go.
He's in the game, boys. He's locked in. I would love to have known a young Matt Berkey at 27.
Listen, this is why
200, 400.
He knew.
I knew. Like I watched Berkey go broke so many times, because he just had
so based.
No, but it's true because he literally just had it on the line all the time, and he's like, well, why would I not play with all of it? I have a skill edge, but at the time he didn't understand gambling's ruin.
This is me,
and that's eventually you're just gonna get got.
This is me in 13 years' time. You said it yesterday on the pod. You're like, you will never be rich, Henry. You are like me. And now the more I get to know Matt Berkey and the more I hear stories like this, I'm starting to connect the dots. I'm like, shit. Maybe this is me at 40. I don't know.
Bro, I have to tell you,
so
I'm
bad.
insanely happy. But
why are you happy?
Because the Steelers might make the playoffs, baby. Woo!
He knows. This guy gets it.
So here's the similarities. We both got friends that crush. So like Espen, Jonas, Dan O'Brien, and then there's just me and you who are just like still shot taking, baby. We're out here putting it all on the line.
To be fair,
we're either spinning it up to $1 million or we're sleeping on the couch. There's no fucking in between.
I mean, to be fair, I did reduce my risk a lot once I came into some wealth, but I do agree with you. Not enough. I
It'll
still
never be enough.
right. Like I still obviously have taken on way too much risk and overinvested in what I believe to be a skill. But the reason why I say like A, you'll never be rich, and B,
Speak for yourself.
well,
right?
I am speaking
Rich
for myself.
is a relative term.
I am speaking for myself, but B, that you'll be insanely happy is because in my experience, from what I've seen around me, both interpersonally and at scale with the world at large, what it takes to be fuck you rich, like literally have fuck you money, are things that I personally am not willing to do.
Examples?
I think that there are a lot of examples where there's an easy amount of money to grab, where you delve into the moral gray.
Right.
And personally, like, I just don't want that. I don't want that on my conscience. Like, I think COVID was a great example. I think we easily could have made mid 7 figures, if not more. Maybe even like, 8 figures seems like a lot to, but I think like mid 7 figures is very reasonable over that 18-month to 2-year period where everybody was just on lockdown,
right?
Just running games. Like literally, every game runner I know just got giga rich during COVID. But like, for me, I just don't want to do that because there are things that I believe in ethically in this game that were outside of my control if I were going to do that. There's no way to ensure a secure gaming environment. There's no way to ensure people aren't being cheated. There's no way to ensure that collusion isn't taking place. There's no way to ensure that you won't get rolled, that your name won't get tarnished and dragged and all this other shit. And to me, that stuff was worth more than taking on the risk for a ton of money. But for people who want to be fuck you rich, this is a no-brainer. There is no risk involved. It's literally just a means of hustling up and leveraging your platforms to accumulate customers. So like that's like one primary example. Others are basically like, in order to get fuck you rich, you have to start kind of at a remedial entry level spot where you're getting somebody else fuck you richer, right? So you need to be very well networked with people who already have tons of capital to employ, and hope that they'll invest in you. And to be fair, this is what I did in the Ivey's Room game, right? I did build relationships like that, and I did leverage other people's worth, and made them money, and I made money along the way, and things of that nature. But I think it becomes very difficult to scale ethically once you start to get outside of, let's call it a spade. Like playing nosebleeds poker is very, very peanuts compared to playing in the real world. Right. When you're talking about the finance industry,
about billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You're talking unlimited.
Yeah.
Unlimited money.
Yeah, you start to talk like tech. Right. You start to talk like tech, real estate, finance. All these big player arenas, and you're dealing with like a lot of those money grab scenarios that I just presented.
Yeah, poker's small.
That are somewhat unethical.
You got to be cutthroat
for sure. Yeah. It's like how much money people are making off of like Section 8 housing, and maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I haven't really delved into the ethics of it, but it's like the first thing that gravitates to my mind because my sister lives in Section 8 housing, and she gets slumlorded all the time, and the places are just like barely fit for living. But this person's cashing an $800 check.
Absolute minimum requirement.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they don't care.
Right.
Because they're just getting the money from the government.
Right.
Yeah, they're doing it by the book in their minds. So that's how they justify it.
We don't know exactly all situations.
It's within the rules of the game. I'm just playing the game.
Right. Yeah, don't hate the player.
That opportunity is presented.
Yeah, I personally struggle to like to game systems for my benefit in order to get wealthy, and maybe that's like a fundamental personal flaw, but
we all have flaws.
It leaves me very happy, and also I think I think I generally take like some level of enjoyment out of playing life on hard mode, which is a terrible trait. But
define hard mode.
I mean, I don't have a retirement fund.
Maserati.
I don't have a 401k. I don't have, I don't have security for when I'm an old man and decrepit. I'm just hoping that you and my nephew are going to be well enough off.
Swimming pool in the backyard.
You really are a gambler, and you're going to get ruined.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, but if the
Berg, I got
Steelers
a
win the
room
Super
for you,
Bowl, it's all
baby.
worth it.
Yeah, Steelers win the Super Bowl, you're set for life.
Yeah, basically.
With your $2,500.
Basically.
It's true.
Moving up stakes.
You know who's gonna save me? It's gonna be Conrad.
Yep. Yeah.
That would be the real. That would be the real heel turn, right?
My Lord and Savior, Conrad Simpson. He's gonna be
Right
looking
at
after
the
me when
time,
I'm 65 years old.
Yeah, right at the time you go completely broke, flat on your ass. That's when Conrad hits it big, and he's like, "Here's your tab money, buddy. You're back."
And the tab money is just generational wealth, like 10 figures.
And then all of a sudden you owe Conrad a tab.
Right. Well, no, then he got his tab back. He'll be giga rich. Everyone's happy. Everyone's happy.
Conrad just signs over like 10% of Let's Get It Poppin' Inc. to me.
Right. LGIPINC.
Oh
I
man,
think I need to trademark that.
you do.
You can make it an LLC, so it'll be the LGIPINC LLC.
No, you can't incorporate and be an LLC.
He can do whatever
I
he
don't
wants. He's
think.
unlimited.
Yeah, unlimited. There's a Russell Wilson joke in there for sure somewhere.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't find it.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think
They cut him. They
didn't
waived him.
They didn't waive him.
I thought they waived him.
No.
No, they benched him.
They didn't do
They
either.
can't waive him. That's
I
so
thought
much money.
Or did he get hurt?
I thought
I
there
don't
was
think he played last game.
Yes, he did. He
Did
played
he?
well.
He definitely played.
They almost
I
beat the
thought.
Chiefs.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
Two
thinking of the
rushing
week. I was
touchdowns.
thinking of the week before.
He got hurt. He got hurt.
Yeah,
he had
yeah,
a concussion.
Yeah, they got blown out by was it the Rams? They lost like 50 something to.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I don't think he played. Yeah.
it was a meme.
Yeah.
I got memed on.
You got.
They got me.
You're the king of the memes. You
I
should know
know.
better.
Yeah, you can't get got like that.
Yeah,
Man.
it's like when there's like a sports talk meme. There's like a sports talk account, like a sports talk Joey or sports talk Barry or whatever, but adjacent to that,
Sure.
where it's like just had a caption that said the Broncos have waived Russell
You,
Wilson.
you know what? You know
They
what
got
is?
me.
You
They
know
got
what
me.
is certain to be true. Well, I guess there's a little bit of a sweat coming in the week 7 or week 18, but I like the side of him still having more bathrooms than touchdowns thrown.
How many touchdowns does he have?
I don't know what he's up to now.
More? Do you say more bathrooms?
He has more bathrooms.
Yeah, there's a thread this guy started this meme where like he was tracking the number of touchdowns and he would do it every week till he got to the number of bathrooms he has in his house, which I think is 12, and he's like still doing it. He thought he'd be done after like week,
That's
5
hilarious.
or 6 or 7.
Let's take a quick peek.
That's great content.
It is fantastic content.
We need to get better at memeing like that in the poker industry. Like how many tournaments do you think X player is going to win compared to bathrooms in the house?
So he's tied. He's 12 touchdowns.
There you go. He needs one more. He's got a week to do it.
He plays very well against the Chiefs. Four of his 12 touchdowns are against the
Broncos.
Chiefs.
Yeah,
It's not the Chiefs.
It's also
It's not him,
it's
the
also a
Broncos.
rivalry. It's like that. Those things happen.
Yeah.
Here's how we can meme on. How long until the current world champion wins another tournament? It's been 6 months.
Jesus, what's he doing?
Well, he's living the life, man. He's not out there grinding on the streets.
He's busy going to nice dinners and stuff.
Yeah.
He's got to get back on the grind.
I don't know.
Let's
Nice
go.
dinner sounds.
I feel like he'll probably
sometimes-
just win PCA.
Yeah.
Don't. Oh.
No.
Yeah,
It just
no.
swaps in now.
I feel like he's probably just gonna win PCA.
I'm gonna
Probably.
win PCA.
All right, he's going to come second to Conrad.
Imagine.
All right,
Oh,
there
Conrad,
we go.
you can win PSPC.
Oh, yeah, that works. That's better. I like that.
Yeah,
That's
I got
nice.
you, man. I'm looking out. I'm looking out for you guys. All right, we don't really have anything else to talk about. I think we've
That was
well
pretty good.
fleshed out Gramblers Ruined. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let us know in the comment section below if you guys want more of this strat talk like this. My plan is to do this on Tuesdays. I'm hopeful to do, kind of like story time with Uncle Burke on Thursdays, a little throwback Thursday to pre-Black Friday days.
Please send bail money.
Somebody get Conrad out of Hawk. Christ's sake. He's in the back room of a pawn shop somewhere trying to
Section
get.
8.
Bro, why you gotta be like that? So yeah, we're Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're gonna have these kind of segments set up for you guys. Hopefully, if you enjoy them, you can let us know a little bit in the comment section. Please, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you'd like us to change. Thank you, as always, to Mr. Kill the Game Bane out here in these streets. We have him for a couple more weeks before he heads back to Europe, never to be seen or heard from again.
Never coming back.
Canceled by Euroreg in Vegas.
No, I
R.I.P.
didn't get my green card, man. What's going on?
R.I.P. Oh,
To find a nice lady here.
I could guess somebody had
Tried.
something to do with that.
Tried.
Old Lars himself probably out there talking to Fucking the deportation.
We'll find you a nice lady.
Get him the fuck out of here. All right, we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.
Later.